Good evening and welcome to this digitally enabled online meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth held on Monday, January 4th, 2021. Happy New Year. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I'll ask the Deputy Clerk to note our starting time for the minutes, 7 p.m. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to those joining us via the YouTube channels. Welcome to councillors and staff and others who've been invited to participate in this meeting. We value you spending your time with us on this first Monday of 2021. I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. I don't believe I have any regrets. Clerk Perfelts, you haven't seen any either. So let us move on to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interests. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared already in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. And I think we'll start with Councillor Anstead.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg. Tonight I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on item 5.4.1, the accounts, as my son attends the St. Mary's daycare, and also on item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anstead, and Happy New Year. Councillor Behrens, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I would like to declare a conflict on 5.4.1, the account, as well as 13.1, as I have grandchildren attending the North Perth Spinrite Child and Family Center, as well as the St. Mary's daycare and the after-school programming. Thank you.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, Councillor Behrens. And now, Deputy Mayor Kellum.
Yes, a Happy New Year, Mayor Kasenberg. I would like to declare pecuniary interest on item 5.4.1 as well, the accounts, with regards to Perth Meadows, as my mother and father-in-law are tenants, and also then the confirmatory bylaw item 13.1. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, and Happy New Year to you. Any other councillors wishing to make a declaration at this time? See no indication of that. Let's explain our virtual processes as usual. I'll be systematically trying to seek consent from various councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions and bylaws that will be put before us tonight. I'll do this to some degree alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I'll move on to the next name on the list. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining the speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have a second say will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the list. This is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors are reminded that if I believe you're not audible, I will call on you. You don't have to worry about that. I'll make sure that you're heard. Councillors are further asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I have called upon you for a verbal reaction. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, our voting technology, I'll call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no on the motion, then return to mute. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda then, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads simply that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
It never came up. I'll have to reboot, but I'm in favor. Thank you.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor has voted in favor. That is carried then. Thank you. Let's move on to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require either council's recognition or action. Grouping them expedites our business. For any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. We have 3 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you wish to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? Please indicate if you do wish that in the chat function. Are we seeing anything? No. Okay, so I have a motion that reads as follows: that consent items 3.1 to 3.3 be received for information, and the minutes of the December 21st, 2020 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call on Councillor Duncan as our mover?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum as our seconder?
Yes, I will move that as well. I'm still having a little trouble with my internet here. I apologize.
Okay, so that's, we got your seconder there, Doug. Okay,
yep.
Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And I think Deputy Mayor's vote is pending. Deputy Mayor, what say you?
Yes, I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thanks. So that is carried as well. Let's move forward then to item 4 on our agenda. We have no public meetings or delegations for this evening's meeting, although we do have some expert presenters with us coming up. So that brings us to agenda item number 5, reports from departments and key staff. Let's begin with item 5.1, reports from the CAO's office. Item 5.1.1 brings forward to council an informational report pertaining to the special project that has been undertaken with support from the province, the Administrative Process Efficiency Review. I'm going to call on CAO Chris Snell, and then he can call on others who are to participate in this presentation to introduce us to this matter. CAO Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy New Year to yourself and council. As the Mayor spoke about, the municipality was successful in receiving $50,000 from the province to undertake the municipal modernization review. And we chose to look at our administrative processes. KPMG was successful through the procurement process and was engaged by the municipality to perform the review. The scope was to look at key business processes and then with the objective of reducing burden and improving customer experience with the municipality. The document, we looked at 4 things. Looked at obtained data and established the key performance indicators. These are the sort of the findings from the thing. Standardized, train selected staff in a lean management project to build independence and foster culture. Look at the modernization through paper-based processes. And step 4 was change management. So we have with us tonight the team from KPMG. I believe Dale and Anna are with us, and will lead us through the findings that KPMG had through their time with North Perth through the last 8 months. So I will now turn it over to the KPMG team.
welcome to the KPMG team. We're not hearing you at this point. You might want to check the mute status.
I might want to unmute myself. Probably that'll be helpful. So we actually have the full team with us. So Betty Dwayne is here as well. As we go through the presentation, we'll be handing it back and forth between the three of us. Each one of us carried a different load through the study and different expertise. So we'll be just handing those pieces off. So I'd also like to, if there are any questions, our preference is that they get asked at the time, because it's a brief presentation, but it covers a lot of ground. So if there are any questions, I'm not sure what your protocol is if hands go up or if someone interjects. But
so we typically ask our counselors when they have questions to through the web chat feature, the text chat. We keep our eyes on that for you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, so Anne is in control of the presentation. I'll be popping the slides forward. So we have our standard disclaimer. All of you have had this document, I believe, for a little over a week or better, almost 2 weeks. And this is a summary of the overall report. Our full report, which has been given to the municipality, is 95 pages long. We've summarized the key points here in this document. So as Mr. Snell indicated, the whole idea of this project was to do a review, not of the whole municipality, but of key processes, and to be able to identify where there might be some opportunity gains, and also get what is called the voice of the customer, so some feedback from residents of the municipality. So as we went through, we looked at 9 different processes in total. Our survey, as we went through, we received 74 responses, which I recognize is not it's not representative of the full population in your municipality, but we did get some very good information, or consistent information, I guess, that we'll be able to bring forward on that as well. And the whole idea of this was to look at is there any potential efficiency gains or opportunities within the municipality? So if we move to slide 5. Sorry. So as we're going through the presentation here, we've got 3 different placeholder slides, and this is one of them. We can just go back.
Sorry, Gail, there's a delay. You must be seeing a delay on my screen.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is one of the 3 placeholder slides that are in there. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's more just to set context to the items that we're going to talk about in each of these different sections. So this is the root cause and solution focus section, and really what we're shooting for is what you're looking at on the screen is on the left-hand side is a typical organization. We're not saying this is representative of the municipality of North Perth, but a typical municipality where we spend a lot of time firefighting. Day job consumes most of our time, and we don't have a lot of time for strategic planning. There's a lot of activity going on in any given time, all different sizes of projects and improvements and changes. And the goal and what our presentation is outlining is how do you get to the right-hand side of this, where there's more balance in your workday, leaders are able to lead, and everybody has a strategic component and are focusing on improvements. And as you can see in the middle of this, that what you're trying to do is be very, very focused on what you're doing. Too often an organization gets caught up in everything's important, so you start to focus on everything. So as we move to the next slide, the 4 key areas, and Mr. Snell alluded to this earlier, that we found were these key topics. One was establishing what are called KPIs, or key performance indicators, and we'll try to stay away from as much of the jargon as possible in this. And what key performance indicators do is it helps bring alignment to an organization, and specifically in our case, the municipality. So how do you get everybody within the municipality working towards the same common goal? So having established KPIs, and we'll get into a little more detail around what some of those could be for the municipality. So is everybody focused on the same thing? Standardization as well. So how do you make the work easier? And we do recognize that every organization has a uniqueness to it, and the municipality is no different. And what we say is standardize what's standardizable, so that you have time to focus on those unique things, because you're going to have unique things hit you every single day. But there are a lot of tasks that go on any given day that are continuous. You know, if you think about finance, you have accounts payables. There's bills that need to be paid on a regular basis. It's winter. You know, we've been fairly fortunate this winter. There's not a lot of snow removal, but snow needs to get removed. And you know, things like that are standard, that go on a daily basis. We should make that work as easy and consistent as possible. And once again, the whole idea behind this is identifying what can be standardized, standardizing it to free up time and create efficiencies. Reducing paper, I think we're all very well aware of the level of IT capabilities that are out there in the world today, and what is it that we're doing right now that is maybe a little older or more archaic than it should be, and how do we focus on moving forward and moving things into more of an IT or electronic based, or just stop doing some of the work or paperwork. And then ultimately, the fourth key component and solution that we're looking at is creating a change management plan. The municipality is, you know, went down this road to do this review, and is in the middle of restructuring and moving forward on different initiatives. And an important component of that is change management. So how do you engage the hearts and minds of everybody in the organization, which pulls you all the way back to number one. Getting everybody to focus on what is important, or what are we measuring to move forward. So these 4 items that are on this slide are what we focused on specifically after all the workshops and sessions that came out as key themes for the municipality to focus on. So if we move to the next slide. So I talked a little bit about this already around key performance indicators. You know, a simple one that every municipality or town or city should focus on is the residents within your municipality are your key source of information or data. On a daily basis, your staff are fielding calls, getting questions. Someone might be out, working out in the street somewhere at a rink, and they're fielding questions from the public. Those questions are an amazing source of information. And when you start thinking about key performance indicators, you want to gather that as much of that information as possible and align it and understand it. What are people asking for? Where are you getting your praises, and where are you getting your requests for improved services? Those metrics, as they come in and they're compiled and presented back to staff, allow us to start moving forward on focusing on the right things. Now, this is what I alluded to earlier, what we call a voice of the customer, and understanding the voice of the customer is critically important. So creating a set of key performance indicators that are shared and known throughout the municipality is a very important step for moving forward with this review. Move on to the next slide, and I believe that's Anne.
So as Dale mentioned, standardization was another key focus area for us, and he's coined the term standardize the standardizable. So it's a really important component, and it was definitely a kind of a pervasive theme that came out of certainly the process mapping sessions that we conducted with your staff team. And so there's 3 components to standardization, and that's educating staff on how to identify waste in the process, and also creating standard work. So those standardizable tasks become consistent, they become second nature, they don't take additional time or effort or mental energy of any kind, really. and it allows staff to have that additional time to focus on the things that aren't standardizable, things that take higher priority, that require more strategic thinking, that type of thing. And then the third component is the operational level tools. So what tools can be established to be put in place so that that consistency is maintained going forward, and that the process remains efficient and effective. So regarding education, certainly training staff to recognize waste in a process is definitely a key step. So when we talk about waste, we categorize waste into 8 different categories, which we included in more detail in your full report. But I think a really important piece to that education is moving staff from the mindset of, well, the process is like this because this is how we've always done it, to looking at it in a new and unique way, and knowing that, if they have some frustration with a process, then probably that's an indicator that there's some type of waste that exists there. And that training provides staff with the taxonomy or the language to communicate, what type of waste is, currently impeding the process, and it allows them the tools to be able to start to address that root cause, that issue, and work towards minimizing it or eliminating it. And then as far as standard work goes, standard work is exactly what we've said: standard operating procedures, standardizing things that are the same every time or should be the same every time, so it becomes second nature. And no additional time or effort is expended on those tasks or those processes. Something that is a good example of that is actually from the subdivision agreement and construction process mapping sessions that we did. There was a lot of standardization that could be implemented there to really make some really effective improvements, some quick wins, for North Perth staff as well as developers, and also the county with that process. And that's just really clarifying roles and responsibilities, creating information packages for developers, that kind of thing, things that can be standardized and then not have to spend time on again in the future. And then those operational level tools. So what tools then need to be created and implemented that support staff and that consistency and maintaining that standardization moving forward. And I think over to Betty for the paper-based processes.
Thanks, Anne. So Anne talked a little bit about our flowcharting and workshops. So one of the key takeaways from these processes that were flowcharted was that they were heavily paper-based. So our recommendation is to modernize the process, but at a pace that makes sense for North Perth. And this is really 3 different steps. So the first step is to identify the waste in the process. During our workshops, we were able to work with the team to identify certain opportunities in the current process. So for example, in the context of accounts payable, we noticed that invoices were sometimes approved by signing a printed copy and then scanning to be sent via email electronically to accounts payable. So there is certainly some inefficiency here. Then the next step is mistake proofing, which means reviewing the current process to mitigate these certain risks that might arise. So for example, in this accounts payable process, an approver could be dealing with competing priorities, and the timing of when the invoice is printed and signed might be significantly different than when it's being scanned and processed by accounts payable. So this could result in a delayed or late payment. And lastly, is taking action to modernize. So this could be in terms of quick wins or a long-term strategy. And a long-term strategy is really to digitize the existing process. So what this could mean is the implementation of a new financial system that would allow for the invoice to be submitted and approved by the approver all within the system. So this not only eliminates the need for any emails or any printing, but it also provides a very clear and easily accessible audit trail in the future. So overall, there are these quick wins for the current state, how to make that more efficient and effective, as well as more long-term strategies for an ideal future state to make sure that North Perth is modernizing the process, again, at an appropriate pace that's best for its system now. So next, I'll pass it off to Dale for change management.
Thanks, Betty. So change management, as I alluded to earlier, is something that's more of an overarching component of the overall progress or plan to move forward. And there's three key components to it. And the behavioral change management structure itself is a way to be able to say, how are we going to methodically look at what's happening and engaging the staff. Communication is the fundamental way to implement change management. There's a number of different components to it. But as you can see, the step 2 on the left-hand side of the slide talks about, why is this change important? What problem will this change solve, and what's the risk of not changing? So these are things that need to be brought forward. So the couple of examples that both Betty and Anne gave, when you think about it, the processes on the surface seem, well, that's simple. Why don't we just go out and implement the changes? The thing is that there are people involved with these processes, and we've all heard the adages of that's the way that we've always done it. And even though a process may seem inefficient and it may seem obvious to an external person that hey, we should just change this, the people that are in the middle of those processes do have somewhat of a vested interest in that process. And to be able to move this forward, we have to take that into account and be able to move things forward. The next slide just talks about a change management structure. This is KPMG's, but we're not promoting this one over any other one. Anybody familiar with change management will recognize that there's basic tenets to change management. And the first step is to make it clear. So if you're going to change something, it has to be focused on a reason why. This comes back to one of the 4 key components we talked about, which was key performance indicators. So what is it that we're shooting for? What's our goal down the road, and how do we quantify that? So making it clear, saying, we need to make a change in this area because this is the direction we're heading, and this is how it's going to help us. Make it known. So communicating the change vision. So this is, we're going to talk about things such as huddle, getting the group together for huddles, and there's team meetings that happen right now. So making it known so everybody understands why the municipality is heading in this direction. Making it real, how do you take those words and start to turn them into action? So making it real is starting to put actual plans in place, and making it happen is we've talked about it, we've got our plans in place, and now we're actually doing it. And the making it stick it comes full circle back to the making it clear. Making it stick is about sustainability within the organization. How do we make it so that this does not regress back to the old way of doing things? And this starts with leadership. And I do have to say, and I'm not just pumping anyone's tires, everybody that we've worked with in the municipality over the months that we've been there has been great. And the leadership is certainly committed to change. And that's an important component to making it stick, is the fortitude to say that, this is going to be hard to start with, but we're going to stick to our plan, stick to our guns, so to speak, and be able to move this forward. So I'm going to pass it back to Betty, who led the survey part of this, the voice of the customer.
Thanks. So here we talk about the voice of the customer, which is a key focus, I think, for North Perth. Through this engagement, we've gathered some resident responses to survey questions to get insight on exactly what the residents are thinking. So in total, we've received 74 responses, and Dale have mentioned before, but this is obviously not large enough or considered representative of the entire population, but we were able to see some similar trends in the responses. So on the right here, we've summarized some key survey results. And if you look to the second to last bullet, we noted that 1 in 5 residents, which means 20% of the responses, felt that the responsiveness and the quality of the municipality's communication can be improved, especially when it came to resident concerns or complaints. So the takeaway here or the insight is that it's important to establish a feedback loop. During our discussions with senior management, it was also highlighted that there is a lack of feedback loop in the mayor and council escalation process. So these survey results just further solidifies the need for that loop to effectively collect data and also track residents' complaints. So when you have more data being collected, the results can be then analyzed together, maybe to identify relationships between two different concerns, or even seeing the progress made through the responses of the same questions over a period of time. So I don't want to highlight all of them, but as another example, 1 in 3 residents, or 33% of the respondents, noted that roads and winter maintenance do not meet their needs or expectations. So again, it does show that there is a greater need to improve the level and the quality of these services. And perhaps this will direct the municipality's focus to investigate maybe perhaps there is a specific location where that is an area of concern. So overall, our findings was that 1 in 3 felt that North Perth could be more prepared to respond to the growth of the community. So this kind of ties it all back together, because some of these comments you may think are small now, but as North Perth expands and becomes larger, these concerns could also become larger as well.
Dale, you're on mute.
And this Christmas break just got me out of my whole habit and that. So you'd think by now we'd all have the speak button figured out. So I was fortunate enough to spend the morning with Mr. Snell and the leadership group, and we did a session to identify key priorities for the municipality, and we have 7 here that that we want to highlight and that the group felt were extremely important. You just heard Betty talk about enhancing customer service through establishing, feedback loop, and you've heard all 3 of us speak to this point. As Betty indicated in the survey, it shows 1 out of 5, so that's 20%. So we also want to look at from the positive side. Of the 74 people that we talked to, 80% of them felt that there was good feedback as well. And not that you want to rest on your laurels, because still 20% had indicated that it wasn't. But as I alluded to earlier, working through with the leadership group, the feedback loop is about solving problems real time and gaining more data real time. So the survey that we sent is a moment in time, and it's a survey is usually responded to by people that have time to respond to the survey, or typically have a pet peeve or are really elated with something. So this type of feedback loop gives you consistent data that you'll be able to actually put into timelines and be able to see what the feedback is. Because when we talk about road maintenance, it could be winter road maintenance, summer road maintenance. We don't know, but being able to trend that through the year, you'll be able to tell what it is. You also be able to, as Betty indicated, further information would give us more information around pinpointing. It could be one bad street that everybody's complaining about, and it makes it sound through a survey that it's more pervasive than it is. So having that feedback loop, and it's number 1 on this list, and it's come up a number of times, is one of those key starting points. From that feedback loop, you're able to create a dashboard, which is number 2, which is what was brought up by the leadership group too, is how do you track and analyze this data? So the more information you get, the easier it is to be able to analyze it and be able to actually make improvements. As it's been noted, as a municipality, you're growing. So as demand grows, you're going to have to manage that. And worked with a number of municipalities across the country. I'm from the prairies in Saskatoon. Worked with them, and they were the fastest growing city in Saskatchewan. And one of the things that they wanted to do as a mayor and council is they wanted to, in Saskatchewan, call it the mill rate, which is the tax rate. So they wanted to maintain the mill rate, even though the population was growing. They didn't want that to change. So they use that as a metric. So going back to 1 and 2, as a way to be able to say, how do we keep the city growing, but keep our taxes low so that people still want to move here so it doesn't kind of get out of control. Establish a process of decommission old buildings and new infrastructure. This was, I found this one really interesting when the group brought it up, but it's really important from a standpoint of you have a limited amount of resources that are working for the municipalities. As you build new structures, they need to be supported and staffed. And if your old buildings are still part of the municipality, they need to be managed and staffed as well. And all that's going to do is start to draw your staff down. So getting a process to decommission, we totally appreciate KPMG and understand the need to maintain buildings that have historical relevance to them and that, but there also should be, as Anne talked about, standard processes around when something new gets built, how do you decommission something or identify if it should be kept for the city or whatever might be done. So this is an important component. Establish a process of escalating matters from mayor and council. This was actually a session that we worked with mayor and councilors on as far as how do you escalate processes, and the key component was how do you separate the duties of this? So this was one of the key priorities so that, mayor and council stay focused on what they're supposed to, and operationally, how does the staff within the municipality stay focused on what they're supposed to be so the residents get the right service in a timely manner. So it was a really good discussion and output from that. Improved efficiencies, effectiveness of budget process. Betty and Anne have talked about this. We've looked at a number of different processes and mapped it out. So looking at that budgeting process and holding departments responsible during the fiscal year. So basically taking the budgeting process away from being more academic and saying we need to do a budgeting process to one that actually starts to go into the feedback loops and gets an understanding of what the people within the municipality wants, the residents, and using it as a way to be able to monitor, are we spending our money appropriately, and that the budget doesn't take a full year to get into place, that it's done in a more timely manner. And last but not least, establishing an action-oriented strategic planning process. So 6 and 7 have a very similar thread. How do you get through this as a municipality in a more timely manner so that you can actually spend the time implementing that strategic plan as well as the budgets? Pass it over to you, Anne.
So a component of the methodology that we used when completing our administrative efficiency review was process mapping, interactive process mapping sessions with North Perth staff. So we completed process mapping sessions for the municipal drains, construction and maintenance, subdivision agreements, agreements and construction, and the accounts payable, accounts receivable process, as well as a councillor mayor escalation process. And essentially what happens in those process mapping sessions is each individual work step is broken down, and it's illustrated in the form of a flow chart. So you can see at the bottom of the screen, there's a kind of a snapshot there, a sample of one. The full maps were included in your full report. And through the flow charting process mapping process, we identified decision points with diamonds. And so typically at a decision point within the process, it's either a yes or a no. It goes one way or another. It's a decision point typically made by staff, or a decision point for the resident or the customer. And then on our maps, we've indicated where there is a pain point or an identified risk or opportunity for improvement with the red dots. And we've added a little descriptor of what those opportunities are. So some big takeaways, there were some key themes from the 7 processes that we mapped with staff. And those were certainly, the lacking standardization, which I've mentioned, the lacking feedback loops with which Betty and Dale have addressed, And then the paper-based processes, there's a lot of moving of paper, and some manual paper-based work that has opportunities for improvement, really broken down into kind of quick wins, things that can be implemented right away to help smooth out those processes, find those tangible efficiencies, right away through the staff that participate in that process. One important thing to note is that certainly those opportunities for improvement were identified, by staff in the facilitated sessions, but it is anecdotal information at this point. Typically, when we would implement a full improvement plan, there would be a period of time where we're really defining the problem, identifying the root cause, and then ensuring that measurements and data are collected to see if what we think is the issue is actually it provides some data, some backup to validate that. So that's part of the DMAIC cycle that we would use in any sort of improvement project, which is the define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So those are all key components to creating those changes and then sustaining them for the long term. And then Dale's now going to talk about another methodology we used in a few of the other sessions that we did.
So this tool set, just as Anne talked about process mapping, we used a number of objective tools as we went through to be able to gather the staff's thoughts and comments and information. And this is what's called force field analysis. And the key for force field analysis is about making change. So how do you move from where you are to where you need to be? And Kurt Loon, who is the creator of force field analysis, his focus and what he said we should do is, instead of trying to push harder, it's about identifying what's holding us back and reducing those restraining forces. And the diagram on the bottom right hand corner is what's called an interrelationship diagraph. And what it does is as you're going through the exercise, you end up with key components. And this is the one for the record management department. And the O's and the I's that you see around there stand for outputs and inputs. And how you read these is you look for the highest output, because that's the key driver. And then what you're able to do is create a path forward. So for records management, what it did is it showed us that the highest driver is lack of or inconsistent staff training around the record management process. So the step one would be the reverse of that. So the restraining force would be that there is a lack of training. So putting a training program in place, which then moves to the second one, which is the output of 3 on the top, which is lack of staff understanding why we need the record management system. So once you put that training in place, then what it does is it starts to produce the next thing in line, which is the understanding. So as people get trained, they're understanding why and how the system is supposed to work. Then it moves on to the third one, which is a lack of staff time to save and share files. The process right now, because of the lack of understanding and the lack of training, it's cumbersome for people to use. So as you improve that training, what you do is you start buying people's time back. And then it moves into the bottom two, where you see that files are not accessible or lack of protection from external threats. Because the training's in place, those threats are eliminated, and the files become accessible because everybody's putting them where they're supposed to be and filed the way they're supposed to be. So this is just a simple diagram just to show one of the tools that we use to be able to create our path forward, which is the next section of pulling it all together. So I'm going to move through this slide very quickly. All this is telling once again, we're using a structure as we go through and report out. And when it comes time for designing your change, the steps that we look at is state it, shape it, see it, sustain it. And as you can see, sustain is in this image or diagram, just as we have in the others, because sustainability is one of the hardest things to do. We can build all kinds of structures. We can get fancy reports like this from consultants, but actually putting it in place and sustaining it is the hard part of the job. If we move into the next slide, so we have the 9 key components here that we brought forward, and these are the, when we start thinking of the next steps and how should these roll out over the next 9 months, we put an abbreviated bit of the roadmap into this presentation. Talking about an infrastructure to track resident issues and complaints, and we've talked at depth to that. Having key performance indicators in place, staff that are trained and knowledgeable. Now, we have the lean principles here, but it's really in quality management systems. It doesn't have to be lean. Just your staff, the key point that we're really trying to get across here is that your staff should be trained in quality management tools. You shouldn't have to rely on consultants to come in and do this work for you. If you want it to be sustainable, everything that we've been talking about, you need your staff to be trained in this. As we make our way through the additional steps of this, creating a culture of continuous improvement, formalizing, standardizing processes, maximizing the use of existing technology. So as you can see, these all start to fold together. And as we move into the next slide, what we've done is put together a Gantt chart over the next 12 months to say, well, where should you go and what should be the steps that you focus on? Well, over Q1 and Q2, so by June, you should be looking at identifying, tracking, and collecting data. That's something that should be put into place fairly quickly. You're getting information every day, and it's not going into a standardized, formatted way of being able to take that data and present it back. Create what we call huddle boards in a central location, review data and metrics with staff on a weekly basis. So this information that comes in, one of the things that tends to happen is we gather information and keep gathering it, but we never feed it back. And there's the old saying about, what gets, I just lost the saying, what gets looked at gets done. But what we want to be able to do is to offer the feedback loop. So the feedback loop are through these quality board huddles and getting staff together and looking and saying, here's all the things that we've heard from the residents over the last week, and here's where it's trending, and then over the last 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 4 weeks, so staff are able to see where those opportunities are and how they align to the key metrics. Using the data collected to create, your targets. So these 3 items are something that we strongly suggest that the municipality moves forward with fairly quickly. This is about gathering information and starting to set a focus moving forward. Standardizing, so training selected staff. Once again, I know this is mean, but it's about quality improvement. So training staff in how to be able to take the knowledge of understanding that this is an improvement opportunity. So how do we actually put that in place? Standardize and formalize procedures, throughout this review for improvements, and create and utilize operational level tools. So really, Q2 and Q3 are about taking the information and actually making a difference with it, focusing your staff on those improvements. Modernizing paper-based processes. So as you can see, step 2 and step 3 into Q2 and Q3 are about starting to implement improvement and changes. So step 3 is really moving into Q3, and then change management. Q1 is about getting everything in place, your metrics, your huddles, feeding information back. Q2, Q3, and Q4 is about implementing. And as you can see, change management, the thread is through all of that. So how do you actually engage the hearts and minds of all the staff within the municipality? And if we move on to our last slide, I appreciate we're a little past our 30 minutes. The immediate next steps, what we're suggesting is, as a leadership group, top-down support is critical for transformation. And once again, I'd be remiss if I didn't, say again how great the leadership group has been that we've been working with since we've been with the municipality. Very forthcoming. The desire to improve is there. So this isn't this isn't a concern for us at all as we, as we present this report out. It's there, just a matter of giving tools and direction. Focusing on quick wins. Both Anne and Betty alluded to, the processes that we looked at 9 different processes. So there's a lot of different, 7 different processes. There's a lot of opportunities that are sitting there ready for improvement and ready to grow. And the roadmap to implementation that I just presented to you, it's up to you as a municipality to say, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to move forward with it. And as a leadership group, I have no doubt in my mind that once you decide to move forward, that you're going to have great success with it. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. So if there's any questions, I see someone would like to make someone has a question.
Thank you, team from KPMG. CAO Snell, do you have any wrap-up comments that you want to make before we turn to questions and first comments?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think one of the things that KPMG found, and certainly you've heard me say this before as well, is that our current leadership and management team is very caught up in the day-to-day. We are really addressing the ongoing issues and fires of the day, and therefore, get him out of here. Sorry about that. We are therefore lacking some of the focus on some of the strategic priorities, and therefore I think we lose some of our focus on the why, and specifically communicating that to other staff on the why. So many of the priorities that KPMG talked about, as council knows, we are working on them. It's just that because we are so wrapped up in sometimes the day-to-day operation, we do tend to lose focus on achieving, and hopefully this gives us a roadmap to implementing some of those. And we need to make a concerted effort, I think, from the supervisor and management team to focus less on the day-to-day and more on the why, and communicating that to the rest of our staff. Thank you, and sorry about my dogs.
Thanks, CEO Snell. To the entire team, the staff and the consultants who we've engaged, my profound appreciation for the work that you've done. When the opportunity was presented to us by the government of Ontario for funding this, I sensed a prime opportunity for us to have a careful look at some things. And I think one of the most important aspects of this, which has been addressed to some degree, but I do have a question for the consulting team, relates to knowledge transfer. I think it's really important for us to make sure that the work that has been sparked here in this project has the opportunity to cascade itself through the organization, and that our people at every level in the organization have the opportunity and the tool sets and the motivation to review and consider their work and how they can make their own work lives better, the work lives of their colleagues, and also certainly render compelling and perhaps even better service to our community. So my first question then, if I may, and I just want it stated so that we have it on the table, is can you give me a sense of how many staff from the organization were involved in the consultation methods that you used over the course of the project?
Ooh. And we'd have to kind of do a quick count in the hand. I know you've been at most sessions. How many people would you say?
Well, I can certainly say that, between the records management process that we had, we had engaged a lot of staff across the organization at multiple levels. We engaged a significant portion of the recreation team. We had a large portion of the finance team involved in our accounts payable, accounts receivable process, a significant amount of staff from public works and environmental services in our municipal drains and subdivision agreements processes. So I think I would defer to CIO Snell on just what percentage of the organization was engaged, but I would say a significant portion for sure.
I would agree with that. I think the only probably groups that weren't involved would be some of the frontline staff with Public Works and the daycare, for example, as well. But most administration staff was involved at one point or another, as well as Anne said, the recreation department with the review on the facilities portion. So. I'd say well over half the staff for sure were involved at some point in the process.
Okay, thank you. That's exciting. And so the next question, and perhaps this is again for our consulting team, do you feel that now that you've interacted with our team and you've indicated to us how they were to work with, and they've been exposed to some of the methods that you in fact used, do you think our organization is nearing readiness to use some of those methods in other processes that you weren't charged with looking at?
So we'd have to be mindful of the tool sets that people were exposed to. So it was more on the identification side of things, so process mapping and the likes. And to Anne's point, there was some crossover, and as Mr. Snell indicated, there's going to be people that were in multiple sessions, so they'd have had multiple interactions. So anybody in those cases could probably process map, to a certain extent. That's, and probably with a little reading. We did bring people along as best we can. Also, with the environment that we're in, from a COVID standpoint, it's a little less interactive than we normally like. You usually have people up against the wall sticking sticky notes and really getting into it, and that, whereas we had to use a less an approach that had less interaction just for safety protocols. And I'm not trying to dance around your question, but what I'd say is from that standpoint, I'm sure there's a number of people that would be able to process map current state processes, which is a starting point. And then there's about the future state and how do you implement change. As our report alludes to, we've identified those lists, and as I said, I believe that you'd have a number of staff that could continue on doing things like that. But the next step is really around, now that you know what your problem is and you've identified it, how do you do something about it? So it's a start would be my answer.
Good. I mean, certainly I took note in your report that you've proposed that sort of first and second quarter of 2021. If we move forward, we take opportunity for sort of define and create benchmarks and explore the data of the organization and find ways to collect that data. So, we want to hit that ground running if we're going to move ahead. That's why I asked that question, to make sure that we have a sense that our people there are some people in our organization who are more than ready and have the opportunity to spread their wings in this.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit different than the tool sets that we were using to draw information out. But you're right. Like, I'm looking at step one about collecting data. There's a significant amount of people that have been involved in this and creating a way to collect the information and the questions and the comments coming from staff. You should easily be able to do that. We've sent some information to some of your staff around quality board huddles. We actually have a video on how to do those. So it's, you do have some of that information. And creating KPI targets, I wouldn't be as bold to say that, hey, you guys are ready to do those. You probably could use some support on creating KPI targets and then probably some coaching on quality boards. But you know, to your point, there's nothing stopping you from tomorrow morning sitting down as a group and going, how are we going to collect this information and start gathering it and storing it so that we can use it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Behrens, I have as next with a question.
Yes, thank you, Dale and Ann and Betty on behalf of KPMG. I find it very intriguing and an excellent report and very detailed. My question would be, and you talked about, like you said, looked at 7 different processes, and it isn't really stated, but are we going to specifically start with those 7, or were they just used as an example? And to follow up with that, at what point in time, and I've looked at it and it doesn't, I maybe missed it, it doesn't say anywhere. When you change processes, for example, accounts receivable or whatever, sometimes you create a more complex system that doesn't work as efficiently as what you think it does. At what point in time do you reevaluate the change that you've made and maybe go back and tweak it a bit? I think I'm just missing that aspect, and maybe I missed it in the report. If so, I do apologize.
No, those are very insightful questions. Thank you for that. So starting with, you're 100% right that you know, we're going to come up with our best suggestions and solutions for whatever an improvement is going to be, and then the structure that's used, the tool that's used, is called a PDSA, so Plan, Do, Study, Act. So you implement and you test those changes, and you usually test those changes, you know, for argument's sake, usually over about 2 weeks. If it's a finance process, it'd probably be over a month because there's those natural cycles. And you get feedback, but you test that and you say, okay, here's what we thought was going to work. Let's put it into play. At the end of the month, we'll step back and look and say, well, you know, how did this work? You know, what was good? What wasn't so good? And then you make those changes, and it's called a PDSA ramp. So you come back in, and it's just that you know, old adage about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? You keep what was good and you make those changes, because you're 100% right. I've been doing this since '99, and you know, thousands of PDSAs. I have never had one that's hit it bang on out of the gate. It's just that's just not possible, because once you start changing, like you say, you're changing a number of things, and the chances that all those interactions are going to be flawless are pretty you know, pretty tough to do. So, and then, sorry, your second question?
Was about, we're going to, like you mentioned, the 7 processes that you specifically took a look at. Are we going to start with those?
I'll probably have to pass that over to you know, CAO Chanel, but these ones were identified not just as a, oh, I guess, and by golly, they were selected saying, you know, there is significant opportunity here. You know, as we help put that roadmap together, there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting with these. You've got a very engaged number of staff in each of these areas. People are going to want to make these changes. You know, you've talked about it. You've got it sitting there. You don't want to tease down and say, hey, you know, thanks for your ideas, and we'll get back to you in 2022. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting with these, but there is 7 of them, and you can't start with all of them at once. So there'd be a little bit more of a process of saying, okay, well, out of these, which ones make sense to go out of the gate? CAO Chanel, did you have anything to add to that?
And I certainly could just explain this. The 7 came as a result of feedback from staff as to what were our most obvious points that we've seen as causing us some pain points and inefficiencies. So I would say it suggests that because of that, we would start with a 7. Certainly, it wasn't an all-inclusive list of things we can improve upon, but I think it does make the most sense to start with these.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of go back to Mayor Kazenberg had indicated, you know, he has knowledge around quality improvement, and we have what's called a project selection matrix. So there are tools, like deeper tools, and that's where we had indicated that it'd be important to train some of your staff in how to do this. And then there's a selection tool. So you'd go through those 7, say, what should we focus on first? So you're using as much objective evidence as possible to move things forward. Where's our biggest opportunity, or maybe where the biggest risks are to the municipality? So staff that are given additional information or education would be able to help you make those right decisions.
Great, thank you. Councillor Andreessen next.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. And I just want to obviously, address the KPMG team. They've done an amazing job with summarizing this information. An incredible amount of data has been collected, and you've done a great job of putting it together so we can understand it. My question is about the modernized paper-based processes. And in the report, it does talk a lot about this modernization happening in specific departments, which I totally appreciate. For example, in the finance department, specific software programs could be used to, perhaps streamline that paper-based process in either accounts payable or receivable. I'm also just wondering about the modernization of paper-based processes as a whole for the organization. I noticed that in working in different committees, some committees share information very, very differently. Some it's through email, some it's through Dropbox, some it's very hard to collaborate. And I'm just wondering if there's a recommendation from KPMG to look at just sharing information as a whole, even in terms of council as well, that it could be streamlined and modernized as well. And if that would be a consideration moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So that falls under the standardization component that we put in, just as you indicated. As we were going through the different processes, we identified, there's a number of things that are being done uniquely to those departments. So that's more of a system-wide standardization component to say, for the example that you used about how you share information, what is the best way of doing that, and how do you standardize that process so everybody's using it the same way. But that would be encompassed within there, but wasn't something that we directly looked at like independently within the scope of what we were doing.
Any other questions from council at this point? Okay, so I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the Administrative Process Efficiency Review Report and approve the Administrative Process Efficiency Review Proposed Action Plan in principle, dependent on annual budget approvals. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to serve as our mover for that?
Yes, I would gladly move that.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, will you serve as our seconder?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate at this time? Further questions? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. My vote did not pop up. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anstedt.
Same here, Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Johnston. So with that's unanimously carried. Thank you, Council. Yes, I think the presentation went on long enough that e-scribe went to sleep for some of us. All right. KPMG team, again, thank you for your engagement with us, for your pleasant demeanor in interacting with us. I think certainly my interaction with your team has been extremely pleasant and rewarding, and I'm delighted to the quality of the report that we received, but I'm also delighted with the enthusiasm I think that that is now building in the organization for some of this. And we know that there are some challenges that will lie ahead on that, but we appreciate the expert advice that you've given us and the work that you've delivered. Thank you very much.
On behalf of KPMG, I want to thank you as well. Your team was amazing to work with and a lot of fun, and I look forward to see your progress in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll invite you to the ABBA dance party when we announce that.
All right. All right.
Thank you. So next up then, Council, is item 5.2. We don't have any reports emanating from the Clerk's Department tonight, so that gets along to 5.3. 5.3, we have no indication of report or reports for our Council from our Recreation Department as item 5.3, although there was an announcement today about staffing related to the organizational change. CAO Snell, did you want to weigh in on this?
Thank you again. As the email stated today, Amy Gangle has accepted the position of Manager of Programs with the municipality. In the meantime, she'll be sort of wearing the two hats of both continuing with the facility sides of recreation until that position is filled. But certainly, Amy's no stranger to anybody on council, and we look forward to working with her with restructuring of the way we deliver our programs to the municipality.
Thank you, CAO. Let me be among the first of council to congratulate Amy on her appointment. I'm not sure if the word woot is parliamentary language, but woot woot. Congratulations. Let's move on then to item 5.4, reports from the Treasury and Finance Department. And let's first look at item 5.4.1. Finance staff has brought forward for council review the accounts as of this day, January 4th, 2021. I note that some councillors have declared potential pecuniary interest in this item and will absent themselves from consideration and voting. Are there any questions about this matter for staff before we consider the resolution? Seeing no indication of that, I have a resolution that reads as follows. The following summary of accounts be received by council for information. The total is $1,581,000. 69, sorry, why do I have a number dyslexia? That's not a good thing. $1,581,069 and the magic 3 cents. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for that?
I will so move, and perhaps it's just too close to January 1st for your dyslexia.
Thank you. That might be the explanation. Appreciate the insight, actually. Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder for this one?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate on this matter? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that would be 7 of us, so that's carried. Thank you. Let's move on to item 5.5. We don't have, do we have something for 5.5? Yes. No. Hold on, let me just check my notes. Source material. So 5.5, Manager of Environmental Services. We have a single item tonight, 5.5.1. Provides council with a report on an emergency action that is required to repair number 5 well in Listowel. And I believe Mr. Hackett's with us to explain that and understand what has been done.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council. Yes, we had to initiate an emergency repair at well 5 in Listowel. And our procurement bylaw requires us to inform the CAO, which he has been, and also to bring a report to council to inform council. So as council may recall, we had a 2020 capital project at well 5, which is basically a well inspection and rehabilitation. When they did the downhole video, they found a small, a very small pinhole leak that was approximately 2.23 meters down from the top That being said, that's no good. So we talked to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and it was determined that we couldn't put the well back in service again until the repairs were made. So the original well casing is 12-inch, and so the fix would be, as we've done previously at well 4 back in 1999-2000, is to install a 10-inch stainless steel liner, and then you would grout in between the liner and the current well casing so that it would be create a seal. However, the original pump and column pipe will not fit in the 10-inch pipe, so there would be some modifications that would be needed. The pumping capacity would not be affected by any of this, and all of the parts have been ordered. It would take about 6 to 8 weeks. So we're looking near the end of March, hopefully much sooner than that, depending on when the parts arrive. Looking at the budget part of it, the original amount of work that was budgeted was $150,000 for the project. The work to date is around $100,000. We're looking at about $61,000 to do this repair. So we're a little bit over, but we're still hoping that they did price at $61,500, a little bit on the high side, just to be on the safe side, and we're hoping that that comes closer to the $150,000 for the entire project. So we're hoping to have that done in the next couple months. I could take any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Hackett. I read the report with great interest, and I had this distinct feeling I was engaged in an episode of MacGyver. Just so that you know, ingenuity, it seems, was called for and being implemented, it would appear. All right, any questions from council, any comments? Seeing none, we have a resolution to support this action. It reads as follows: the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive for information the Listowel Well number 5 emergency repair report. Can I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Anstett, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I would second that motion. Thank you.
All right, any discussion or debate from council on this? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Okay, eScribe is back to full functionality. Good news. We have no reports tonight from our manager of operations or our fire chief. I happen to know they're both working diligently on a number of things based on reports I've taken in the last 24 hours. We are now at item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or our committees? Again, the usual process, if you'd like to speak, let us know through the chat function of the web conferencing tool. Okay, we're not seeing anything. That means we can move on to item 7. We have received no items of correspondence beyond anything that was already shared for council's disposition. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda, which allows council to consider and enact bylaws. We have no further bylaw proposals tonight before us. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda. Are there any notices of motion from councillors attending the meeting tonight? And we're not seeing anything there. Let's move to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? If you'd like to speak, again, the usual process, indicate in the chat window. First, we'll call on Ms. Gangle.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Just wanting to let everybody know that we have put on the Have Your Say North Perth, Memorial Arena park design options, and seeking input from the public. So far, we've received some great input and quite a bit of engagement from the community, which is fantastic news. And that is one of the items that council was hoping for. So our consultants are already quite pleased with day 1. We will leave the platform open for a couple of weeks and take that input with regards to the concepts of the designs.
Thanks, Ms. Kenkel. It was an interesting experience to complete that survey. So councillors, if you haven't had your opportunity yet, that opportunity is, I believe, still there for you as well. Any other announcements that we need to address at this time? We're not seeing any indication of that. That brings us to item 11. We have no matters before us to consider in the closed session of council, which means we can also skip past item number 12 because there's nothing to report from a meeting that didn't happen. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all its actions and business of its meeting through what is known as the Confirmatory Bylaw. I have a draft of the Confirmatory Bylaw, number 1-2021. It's exciting to start with number 1, which reads as follows: that bylaw number 1-2021 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the council of the municipality of North Perth be introduced, read and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed. The said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for this one.
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Okay, so we're missing the vote from Councillor Johnston.
My vote didn't pop up.
So what's the...
I'm in favor.
Thank you. And we got Councillor Andreessen, so that's 7. That is therefore carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we have completed the deliberation and taken action on the business that did come before us tonight. Before I read a motion to adjourn, is there any further business? Seeing no indication of this, I have a resolution for adjournment that reads as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 8:22 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Can I call on Councillor Behrens to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I will move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Callum, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have that vote. It's not debatable, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Council, we are adjourned until our next regular meeting on Monday, January 11th. Thank you for another excellent meeting, and I wish you a good week.